every company in this space and other traditional industries should be thinking about how do we convert our innovation strategy from something that can be perceived as kind of cool and you're testing out things and it really be perceived as innovation theater to something that is actually contributing to not only your long-term vision but your core strategy today.
Hello and welcome to the REIT Report. I'm your host, Sarah Borson-Keto. Today's episode is the first in a three-part miniseries focusing on AI adoption within the REIT industry. In this episode, we're demystifying what AI is and isn't in real estate. In following episodes, we'll look at AI in action for REITs and AI innovation strategies for REIT leaders. With me to unravel all of that is Earnest Sweat, whose insights in this area reflect his background in REIT equity research, his work as a key founding member of Prologis Ventures, and his AI-driven startup advisory roles. Ernest, many thanks for coming on the podcast.
Sarah, thanks for having me. It's kind of like full circle. I started my career, as you mentioned, as a REIT analyst at BMO Capital Markets, and remember the days of spending a lot of time at the famous hotel in New York at NAREIT. So this is just full circle. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Great to have you back. So I did just give a taste of your expertise just now, but can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got involved in this very complex and fascinating field?
Yeah, so I started my career out as a REIT analyst. That was after studying economics and political science at Columbia and got connected to the BMO Capital Markets team. And that's where I started out fresh out of school. Being in equity research is a great place for the foundation of any career. I'm biased, but in particular, being a venture capitalist, because venture capital is about finding the true value of a company and finding exceptions that will be large companies eventually. And the training that you get as an equity analyst really teaches you the fundamentals of one, being able to take macro and micro data and coming up with a thesis. Two, be able to ask tough questions to management teams and kind of read between the lines to be able to find what is the true value of a company. Three, how to be able to articulate your thesis to various stakeholders. So that's where I started, not knowing where it would lead me, but that's kind of where I started. Then after I finished 4 years there, I got the entrepreneurship bug and was always fascinated with how people manage their networks. And so this was in 2011 and started a company that utilized social media data, LinkedIn data to help people really cultivate a stronger network. And this was kind of early days of kind of AI and I would say data analytics. And so I raised about $100,000 of pre-seed funding and then made every first time founder mistake you could think of. And so those lessons of like picking the wrong go-to-market strategy and not equipping myself with advisors that could help me skip steps really motivated me into the role that I have now. So went to business school, focused on how to help founders and what kind of roles I could do in that manner. And thanks to my business school, Kellogg at Northwestern, I got placed in a internship in New Delhi, India, where I worked for a venture firm abroad for 3 months, which was just life-changing, not only from a professional perspective, but also a personal perspective. And so invested in a lot of different things around kind of future of work and education technology. And so that's what motivated me to move out to the Bay Area, which I've been at since 2013. And in 2015, entered into the venture space, helping Prologis create their first venture capital program. So I'll stop there, but that's how I got into this world.
Hey, that's really interesting. So you're right in the heart of the AI world where you are.
Yes, right in the heart of it. San Francisco and the Bay Area overall have had a history since like the 60s, 70s of being a heartbeat of where emerging technology lives. And within this next technological shift from kind of cloud computing now to AI, we're seeing it again.
It's fair to say that AI has been a buzzword for years now, but it seems to be evolving rapidly, especially with generative AI. How would you describe the progress of AI in recent years? And where would you say we are today?
Yeah, it really has. So as I mentioned, when I was starting my company, it was kind of early days of machine learning, and that's essentially a precursor to what we see now with generative AI. But think of it as like back in 2011, 2012, it was really predictive analytics. So we have data and we try to predict based on that data what's going to happen next. And slowly, thanks to a lot of venture capital dollars and investment dollars going into this idea and this thing called neural networks, which essentially is a technology that's trying to mimic what happens in our brains, right? And where different parts of your brain are able to essentially compute and assess information and then send that out to other parts of the brain that then execute on it. And so we've been, a company like OpenAI it becomes this kind of big phenomenon through ChatGPT in 2020, 2021. But that company was founded in 2015. And so that's the type of kind of like investment and research that has had to happen for to see the growth that we've had. So I'll kind of fast forward to what we kind of seen over the last 5 years. And I'm not sure if you remember, Sarah, when you first tried or played with ChatGPT, but it was essentially like talking to a 5, 6, 7 year old and asking them questions. And essentially, what's happening in these large language models is similar, just at a faster pace than we've seen in predictive analytics. They're trying to use language to predict, okay, what makes the most sense based on this vast information repository of data that we have. And obviously, as it's training itself, these large language models, it's getting smarter and smarter, being able to predict, oh, this is what you mean when you say this or this, and coming up with answers on its own thanks to this prompts. And what we've seen over the last 5 years is it go from a 7-year-old to a middle schooler to a high schooler to now, I think the work that is able to do and the different advances we've seen in different types of models, whether it's OpenAI or Google or DeepSeek, is, early college to like a graduate of college, early PhD.
Gradually creeping up on us.
It is. It is. It is.
So, what would you say are some common misconceptions about AI in real estate that you think need to be cleared up at this point?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is not just happening in real estate. And as an investor, I'm a generalist B2B investor that has had history in real estate and around prop tech, but in other industries like healthcare and manufacturing and insurance and retail. These are all similar industries where it hasn't had as much technology adopted. There's a misconception that AI is just going to be a cost cutter and be able to take people's jobs. And that's not the case. That's not my view. I've heard other investors and operators use the term of like, AI is not going to take your job today or tomorrow or in the next 3 years. But someone who uses AI will. And so I think that it's another tool in the toolkit that people need to start incorporating, given I don't have to explain to this audience of REIT leaders, but we're experiencing a lot of different macro and micro trends that are influencing how real estate does business and other industries do business heavily. So with demographics changing, with kind of our geopolitical system changing as well, things are, margins are starting to diminish, and we don't have as many resources as we used to. And these companies are all being expected to produce more with less resources. So I think we're at a critical point where technology like AI can be very useful for those things. And so I think there's a conception that like, oh, we just got to try it. We got to try it. And I think, leaders of companies need to think thoughtfully of like, hey, where are there opportunities where we can utilize AI where it is today to automate and do what I would say AI does best. And that's take a lot of information for a repetitive, repeatable task and do them over and over, which allows then, my belief, humans do what they do best. That's the human element. That's understanding their customer. That's collaborating to solve problems that are changing every day to make a better company. I think what I would advise a lot of leaders is like thinking about where's their opportunities, actually talk to their middle management which is critical. Those are the people on the ground that will be implementing any strategies to understand, hey, where are there workflows that you see are repeatable and where do you feel stretched today? Reminding them that this will enhance their ability and to make more revenue for the company and themselves, and not something that's just going to be a precursor to them losing their jobs.
Ernest, can you share a few high impact use cases for AI in the REIT space? And are there any success stories that you've seen?
Yeah, without naming specific names, because that's something we can do later on, and and want to be respectful of a lot of different companies that are doing a lot of different things. But where I've seen it is a misconception that I didn't mention earlier is that people think AI is only applicable to just marketing and leasing. And those are areas that are valuable. But when thinking about kind of like smart leasing, it's about, hey, you're getting a number of requests and pings from potential individuals who will lease your properties or lease apartments within your properties. But how are you able to quickly understand who's a real customer, potential customer, and how to upsell them, how to be there for them so they have a better experience. So then your people can really do what I said and mentioned before is like the human element better. And so I think for leasing specifically is about using tools that kind of automate that leasing process, understand lease terms, understand where there are terms that maybe don't apply well to your target customer base anymore, or where there's some opportunity to kind of show also good faith or have opportunity for upselling and increasing rent if that's, if there's some opportunity there. So this could really speed up acquisitions. Other areas I've seen in other use cases is like energy optimization as well. So whether it's a office or industrial properties, how can we use AI to make sure that we're optimizing how much energy is being utilized, especially as labor just trends have changed since the pandemic, right? And you should be able to use data to be able to predict when, you're going to have a lot of shipments come in and maybe you should have more labor or not, and the conditions for that, and when it's, things are off. And this is also within office, it's changed a lot too. When people go into office, depending on the industry, people are going more and more. And I think people are realizing they need that human connection to be able to actually tackle some of the biggest problems. But is there a way to actually optimize that energy use when they're in the office? Another thing is portfolio risk modeling, helping them to REITs to be able to assess, hey, where is there opportunity for acquisitions? Where's there opportunity to sell properties? Where should they make more bets in different markets? So those are just a few use cases. But if you understand the theme, it's like, what's something we do all the time? What's something that has stretched our human resources to date, and something that enables our company to leverage data that we're already being able to acquire?
Great. So that sounds all very useful and positive for companies. But what about risks? Where do you see the biggest risks for REITs when adopting AI, whether that be technical, ethical, or operational?
Yeah, this is a great question, and something that I advise whether mid-market all the way up to Fortune 100 companies on across industries. Because as I mentioned before, there's this just like interest in utilizing AI where, there's a lot of CEOs that are like, I think some stat I saw was 37% of enterprise execs have reported wanting to leverage some version of Gen AI. That was from McKinsey. But still, there's a lot of risk and pockets of like who owns the project versus where can you find the actual data. And so there's kind of some data issues there. But I would say we're at a critical point where companies that are being kind of captains of industry cannot afford to just wait for technology to be 100% perfect. As we know, things are changing fast every day. So you have to, as a company, understand, all right, what's the right amount of risk versus return that we're willing to see, that to be able to work with a lot of these growth startups or early startups. But the biggest risk are sometimes you can find bad data, and the thing I've always heard is bad data in, bad data out, right? And so making sure that as a REIT, you're able to experiment and find, hey, where is the clean internal data? Where is it found? What's the most important data? And this is why working with startups and having the infrastructure internally to have like startup engagement teams is critical. Other thing is about ethical, as you mentioned, is like what data is important that can help you leverage in your operational efficiency, but how can you prevent any issues? And so, are the companies SOC 2 compliant that you're working with? Have you anonymized the data and making sure that you've gotten consent and privacy as well? So, making sure that you have your legal teams involved, but understanding in small instances, whether it's pilots or not, making sure that you're working in a way that doesn't stranglehold the startup in a manner that you're not even able to utilize the the offering. And then there's the risk of vendors and the procurement of AI technology. Right now, we're seeing from the venture space, there's this thing called, I don't know if you heard of it, Sarah, but vibe revenue, where there's an interest in AI and CEOs across industries are letting their individuals like procure AI at certain budgets, but it's without a plan, without focus, and not really diligencing in a manner that, hey, this could really help us out, and not having a plan of like what actually success look like. And so what I've suggested to a lot of these companies is like start off small first, have the parameters of what success looks like, and do something that is emerging called venture clienting instead of piloting, where it's small contracts, limited risk because of that, but it's around a specific product where you've already gotten buy-in from the internal company as well as the innovation team as is walking them through the process. So we know what success looks like and can leverage it. And then I've already mentioned culturally what the risk is, but if you approach that and letting all your team members know, hey, this will not take your job, but this will make sure everyone keeps their jobs and thrives and you get to do more interesting work, you'll succeed.
Yeah, everyone's happy to hear that. So,
But it's a human thing, and you can't approach it about
yeah.
just like, top down forcing it because you really need that middle management to be bought in.
This is a good segue into the last question. For REIT leaders just starting to explore AI, it might all seem very overwhelming, but where do you recommend they begin?
I think one book I would suggest for REIT leaders is a book called Venture Mindset. I can provide the authors and so it can be in the show notes, but this book essentially is about how can corporate leaders apply venture principles inside their four walls. And one of the mandates that's repeated is you have to bring outside ideas inside and have individuals inside your company that are open to new ideas and can kind of do the translation as well. So I would say first seeking out organizations like NAREIT where you can talk to other individuals and in your industry, out within your asset class, within REITs and outside to see what people are utilizing. Because it's not just going to be technology that an AI that's just for your specific asset class. There's also a procurement of technology that can help you run better as a business, right? Whether it's CRMs or ERPs or whatever it might be. I would also look to connect truly with the venture community, especially those that have strategic insights. So someone like myself who's, been a REIT analyst who understands what REITs are looking for and the problems that they face, no matter if they're a mid-market or very, very large company, to be able to show, hey, here's a trusted source. Here's someone who can tell you the types of companies that you should look at. And it can be a back and forth conversation where, hey, someone like me, hey, Ernest, these are the problems we're facing and the pain points we have. What do you think about them? It just starts to bring in more conversations. And obviously, you're going to make the best decision for your companies. But now it can be a little bit more of a procurement that's customized to your strategic needs and where you're going. I think the last thing is every company in this space and other traditional industries should be thinking about how do we convert our innovation strategy from something that can be perceived as kind of cool and you're testing out things and it really be perceived as innovation theater to something that is actually contributing to not only your long-term vision but your core strategy today companies and leaders are drastically thinking about how fast technology is moving, how that's going to help upstarts in their industry who are looking to utilize technology to leapfrog leaders in industry. And so there's a real chance of, with all the changes that are going on, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, that you might not be around for another 30, 40, 50 years. So how do you build up that internal resilience and knowledge that you already have and incorporate it, empower it with AI to make you continue to have that lead and be a leader in your industry? So those are just some of the things that I would think about: finding best practices, finding advocates that are outside that can help you really inform your current and long-term strategies.
Ernest, this has been so useful. Thank you so much for your time and look forward to the next conversations that we have.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for having me. Looking forward to having more conversations.
And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform.